Hey folks, this is Mark with Eigen Designs and welcome back to my channel. About 2 months ago, I put out a video of 5 CNC projects to help inspire the CNC community out there, show how I use my machine, and I was surprised at how popular the video was and how popular the plans were. My 2 most popular items were the iPad holder and then this large serving platter. So given this high interest level, I'm going to do 5 more CNC projects in today's video, and some of these pair the woodworking projects with little accessories that you can find off of Amazon just to create something unique and special. I'm going to cover each of the projects in detail in this video, and I'll also have the plans available if you want to get straight to carving. Let's go. The first project we're going to look at is a cigar and whiskey holder. Now this is specially designed to fit a rectangular glass on the left-hand side and then a stainless steel ashtray on the right. And both of those accessories it's meant to be paired with are going to be linked in the description below. But it's also a great project to show off a highly figured piece of wood if you have it. So speaking of wood, I'm going to start off this project by going through my scrap pile and trying to extract pieces of usable wood that I've got left over from other projects. Fortunately, I have enough solid pieces of wood that I can use for the projects today, but you could easily glue up a panel of smaller scraps if you had that lying around your shop. So let's talk about the design. This particular design calls for 6 different tool paths to carve out the design that you see here. Most of my designs take 2 or 3 to complete the design, but this one took 6 because of the complicated nature of the actual project itself. I'm only going to show this once in this video, but the way I secure my projects, I either use some painter's tape and some CA glue, or I use some double-sided tape, and then I use the grid lines on my CNC spoil board to actually align it. Once I have that, I always zero my stock in the lower left-hand corner before starting a project. Now the reason why I'm using double-sided tape instead of clamps on my T-track is that this tool path is going to go all the way through the 1.5 inch thick stock. And anytime I'm cutting all the way through material, I just always use double-sided tape or some painter's tape and some CA glue so that piece never moves around as you go through subsequent tool paths. Once the contour cutout is done, I keep the 1/4 inch end mill that I still have in my CNC, and I carve out the rectangular hole where the cup is going to go. Next, I do a contour around the rectangular area for the cup holder just to give it a nice round rectangular profile. Next, it's time to remove the bulk of the material on the lower cigar section of the holder. This is going to make it look as though the cup holder section is somewhat elevated relative to the rest of the holder. Now it's time to switch to the 3/4 inch bowl bit. I'm only going to show this one time in this video, but anytime I do a tool change, I only re-zero the Z axis since the X and the Y are already set for the CNC. So using the 3/4 inch bowl bit, I make a series of grooves in the lower section of the holder. This will be used to hold the cigar either in a rest position or allow it to encroach into the ashtray section of the holder. Speaking of which, the ashtray carve is the very last thing for this particular CNC project, and I'm cutting it to a depth that allows the top of the ashtray to sit flush with the bottom of the groove. And before removing my project from the spoil board, I just do a quick fit test with both the glass and the ashtray to make sure that everything fits seamlessly. Once I've confirmed that everything fits right, I then begin the sanding process. My general philosophy on CNC projects is to spend as little time finishing as possible. I found this 2-inch drill attachment set for 15 bucks to be a big help for getting out the swirl marks on the inside of the CNC carves, and then I use my random orbital sander with 120 grit sandpaper to get the rest of the project. Finishing this project just takes a few minutes. I put a little bit of mineral oil, and then I spread it around using a sponge applicator pad until the wood grain is completely saturated with the mineral oil. And what you're left with is a really nice looking whiskey and cigar holder. The glasses are about $9 a piece and the ashtrays are about $2 a piece. So all in all, to make this project, you've got about $11 worth of accessories plus the wood that you have in it and the time on the CNC. but it's a great CNC project to show off a piece of highly figured wood if you have some lying around the shop. Next, we're going to look at a jewelry box made entirely on the CNC, and this is a design I'm pretty proud of. Whenever you open up the box, there's two different openings, big enough for rings or some earrings, perhaps a bracelet. It's probably a little bit too small for a watch, but everything is cut on the CNC. The design takes a single piece of wood and carves the bottom half and the top half of the box from the same piece, and the hinge inlays are oriented such that whenever you install the hinges, the two box halves come together perfectly. The first step in this process is to cut out the majority of the material using a 1/4-inch end mill. I didn't use a bowl bit here because I wanted the inset to be flat on the bottom and rather precise on the corners and not be too round. The downside, of course, is that it takes quite a bit of time to carve out this much material with a 1/4-inch end mill. With the majority of the material removed, I then take that same 1/4-inch end mill and I do a contour cutout prior to cutting the hinge inlays. Next up, it's time to cut the hinge inlays, and you can see as the bit plunges down, it actually goes inside the cavity where the contour cutout was done. That's why I did the contour toolpath first prior to doing the hinge inlay. And these are going to bury the hinges deep enough to where the two halves are going to come together perfectly whenever the hinges are installed. To install the hinges, I take both halves of the box and put them next to each other, back to back, to where both hinge insets are facing one another. I then drop the hinge into that space, and it's a very tight fit. There's not any room for play, which will ensure that the two halves come together perfectly. I then put a single screw into each of the hinges so I can confirm the fit and do some sanding and routing, but we're going to have to take the hinges off to finish, so I don't put all the screws in just yet. I decided to route the top and bottom edges of the box with a chamfered edge. I think that gives it a nice clean look, but you've got a lot of creative freedom here if you wanted to do something more decorative. For this box, I'm going to be finishing with a satin aerosol lacquer made by Minwax. And this finish sprays on very easily and dries to the touch within minutes, so you don't have to wait a long time in between coats. Once the finish has a chance to dry, I install the hinges and put in the remaining screws that I did not install before. So to turn this box into a jewelry box, we're going to use some velvet and some packing foam. I start off by covering the top of the box with velvet, which covers all the swirl marks left behind by the CNC, and then I take some packing foam that actually came with the whiskey glasses from the Cigar and Whiskey Holder project, and I made two little pillows that sit inside each of the cavities, which leaves space for an earring or a ring to be dropped in between them. So this is a very cool project that you can do in the CNC, and the accessories altogether per box are probably $8 to $10, and there's still a ton of room for customization on this as well. On the top, you could engrave somebody's name, you could engrave an anniversary date. There's a lot of room for creativity here if you wanted to personalize it for someone special. The next item we're going to look at is the wine caddy. Now, I see a lot of these on Etsy, and this seems to be a pretty popular woodworking item. The design itself is pretty simple. It's designed to slide over the top of the wine bottle and hold two different glasses next to each other, so you could bring it on a picnic or, have it as a centerpiece on a table. Now, this particular design is straightforward. It's just two tool paths to create this wine caddy, and one of those tool paths is going to be a 45-degree engraving bit to carve out this decorative wreath around where the bottle is going to go through. I'll be using a 1/4-inch end mill to do the contour cutout for this particular item, and I took off my dust boot to give a better camera view, but as you can see, it leaves a ton of dust behind whenever I don't have the dust boot on. To make this wine caddy a little bit more interesting, I'm going to be engraving a ivy on the top side because I think it looks a little bit plain without anything decorative. But you could easily replace this with somebody's name or a company logo, something to make it more customized to the person that you're giving it to. Once all the CNC work is done, I use some 120 grit sandpaper just to remove any of the lines left behind by the CNC bit, and I'll also hit the top and bottom of the wine caddy as well. Lastly, I'll put a chamfered edge on the bottom side of the hole where the wine bottle is going to go through, so that it fits the profile of the bottle just a little bit better. For the finish, I'm going to be using some mineral oil to quickly finish this particular item, but since it's not going to come in contact with food, you could just as easily use some polyurethane or some aerosol lacquer if you wanted to. So here's how it looks once it's finished and actually on top of a wine bottle with a couple of glasses. Easy project. This is definitely a great one to consider if you're new to CNC work and you want to try a simple project to get familiar with toolpaths and how to use the software. This next project is actually a hybrid between the wine caddy that we just looked at and the circular serving tray that I actually did in my last CNC project video. I had the idea to replace the center area where the white dish is with a hole that would fit the wine bottle, very similar to the wine caddy, and bring the functionality of the serving tray to the wine caddy concept. Let's take a deeper look at the design. At first glance, you can tell I leveraged a lot of the same architecture from the previous circular serving tray from my past video, but then I added the center cutout with the same dimensions as the wine caddy, and then I also added 2 areas for wine glasses to be held on either side of the tray to balance out the weight. So I started out by carving out the bulk of the material using a 3/4 inch bowl bit, and those bowl bits make quick work of all the material that needs to be removed. I then used a 1/4 inch end mill to do a contour cutout around the circular tray, as well as carving the inset for where the wine glass holders are going to go. Similar to the wine caddy before, I put a chamfer on the bottom side of the hole where the wine bottle is going to come through to have it sit in that profile a little bit better whenever it's sitting on top of a wine bottle. But I liked it so much that I decided to replicate that on the underside and the top side of this particular tray. The router bit does leave behind a rough edge, but a sanding block with some high grit sandpaper can smooth those over really quickly. The process to finish this is very similar to what I've already covered, so I'm going to go through this pretty quickly. With my random orbital sander, I generally sand up to 120 grit, and then I use my drill attachments to quickly sand each of the bottoms of the insets on the tray. Then I finish with some mineral oil to quickly add some color and some protection to the project. I ended up making 2 different color variations of this project. The lighter color that you see here, I think better pairs with the white wine. Just lighter tones, and there's no one dominant color that takes your attention away from the bottle of wine. But the walnut I felt was better matched for the darker bottle of red wine that you see here. I also experimented with having the glasses right side up as you see here, or upside down. Both seem to work pretty well with this particular design. The last project we're going to look at today is going to be for our 4-legged friends. Now these pet bowl stands are going to come in 2 different sizes. I'm going to focus this video on the smaller size that you see here, which is good size for cats and smaller dogs. But there is a larger size that I'm going to have plans available for, but I'm not going to go over the details of that design, but it's essentially the same process. So to make this pet bowl stand, we're first going to carve out the inset for where the legs are going to go, and then a second tool path that's going to cut everything else out, including the legs. To cut the inset for each of the 4 leg holes, we're going to be using an 1/8 inch bit. Whenever we cut the legs out, the legs are going to have sharp corners on them, so we will have to use a 1/8 inch roundover on the edges of the legs so that they fit in those holes. But if you do it right, those should fit in perfectly whenever they're all finished. To carve everything else, I'm going to be using a 1/4 inch end mill, similar to how I've done most of the carving in this video. And that's going to cut out the shape of the actual holder itself. It's going to cut out the circles for the dog bowl, and it's going to cut out each of the 4 legs. With everything cut, I take the 4 legs over to my router table and put an 1/8 inch roundover on each of the corners, so the legs fit snugly in each of the post holes that we just milled. I also decided to put an 1/8 inch roundover on the actual holder itself just to give it a softer look. for the glue up, I put some Titebond 1 into each of the post holes and used a silicone brush to spread around the glue. And I also applied a little bit of glue at the bottom of the post that was actually going to be going in the post hole. Once all 4 posts were in, I ended up taking this over to a flat surface, turning it right side up and putting some heavy books on top to make sure that there was no wobble in it prior to the glue drying. I decided to use Minwax's satin lacquer finish for this particular project because I thought it would be a more suitable finish for the wear and tear this thing is likely to see. And here's how the final product turned out. I think it's a good size for a smaller dog or a large cat. There is a larger size. If you've got a medium to large size dog and you want bigger bowls, this would definitely be a better choice for you. But that's going to wrap up this video. So those are 5 CNC projects. Thank you so much for the support. I love producing this type of content. I look forward to seeing you on the next one.